Welcome to Chalk Talk,
Chalk Talk.
Leadership Uncovered, where we dive into the minds that are shaping the future of education.
The future of education. People don't always see children as beautiful as they are. You treat others the way they want to be treated.
Welcome to Chalk Talk, where we take a deep dive into inspirational leaders in education and explore their journeys and what they're doing within the educational field. Today, I'm delighted to have my guest, Theresa Battle, Superintendent District 191, a person I've had the pleasure of working with for years. And today we're going to talk to Theresa about some of the formative things that happened in her career and her personal life, as well as professional life, that kind of shaped the leadership and the direction of where 191 is going. We've been working with this district for years, and I have a pretty good knowledge of some of the things, but I'm excited to learn more, especially Theresa's focus on inclusion and equity throughout the student base and the treatment of employees. So please welcome Theresa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's our third Chalk Talk, and I'm so delighted to talk to you. As we work together, as we've been part of the Burnsville community, I definitely see strong leadership and the impact it has throughout a community. And I wish I knew more. And so I wanted to take some time to ask you some questions today and figure out kind of where you're going with this.
So thank you for the invitation and for your kind words about my leadership and my district.
One of the first kind of questions I like to ask is, why education? Like, what brought you to this career path? My mom was a teacher for 30 years in Minneapolis and kind of bounced around. She was in Minneapolis at a couple of private schools, stuff like that. And it was always where her heart pulled her. But I'm always curious, especially when you get to like education and leadership, I think it's a different kind of mindset. So what drew you into education?
I did not initially major in education in college. I always had an interest in helping children and youth who experienced difficult life situations. So initially I thought I wanted to be a child psychologist or psychiatrist. Attended Hampton Institute, now Hampton University, and majored in psychology. But then I was in a freshman biology class with pre-med majors and quickly realized, I don't know, this actually is a medical degree. So got some guidance from the Career Center, and it was special education. I wanted to work with children with emotional and behavior disorders, and so changed my major to education. But what was interesting, my three best friends from high school, all three of their mothers were teachers. So actually my best friend, I used to watch her mother preparing lesson plans, and she also happened to be a special educator.
Okay.
So that's how I found my way, and it really is aligned to my purpose to help children and teenagers have their hopes and dreams realized.
So were there any kind of moments when you were younger? I mean, it sounds like your heart was kind of in service, not necessarily in the medicine. So are there any other kind of formative moments that shaped kind of how you wanted to lead as you shifted degrees?
Well, I think I was influenced. I've always loved school. I've always loved reading. But at my elementary school, the principal was a woman, and she had been a science teacher. We had arts, we had reading, math, science, really high level of expectations. So very early, I knew a woman could be a leader at a school. Then it continued. I went to an all-girls public high school in Philadelphia High School for Girls, where girls were nurtured to pursue your interests, that they had the confidence. And so that continued with all of my teachers and administrators in high school. So family first, then school staff that continued in elementary and high school, and then of course, college. Really just people supporting all the way, having high expectations.
How have you navigated the challenges of transgender students and LGBT community within your district? I understand that there's a lot of things that we need to work with intention to make sure that all students feel welcome and that we have a safe environment for children and give them the same opportunities that you had to grow and blossom into their, the full potential. Talk to me about some of the challenges and how you've transcended those and navigated those throughout your career.
very interesting question that was a question posed to me by the student interview team when I applied for this job and I became a finalist. So one of the questions the students did ask, what was my position on bathrooms for transgender students? And so I will respond in the same way I did with my students, because that has been my approach, that everyone should be able to void indignity, and we're all human. And so humans should be able to have a place where they can void indignity. And so to make sure that we have facilities that are available for every student and staff member, irrespective of their gender status. And so that's been my approach, is not to dehumanize people. It's important as a leader to listen to multiple perspectives, but you really have to live your values. And so when it came to policy, the board and I were very thoughtful, following the law, Minnesota law, but it comes down to how do you treat humans and how do they want to be treated. I grew up with the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, but it's really the platinum rule. You treat others the way they want to be treated. It's not about you.
I like that. I like that. So the Grow Your Own Teacher program is something that's been impactful in your district, and it's not something I actually know too much about. So can you tell me what was the process to bring that on, kind of what it is, and tell me about the impact it's had?
Well, it's been well known that there's been a challenge in attracting young people to our profession. I would say that I've looked at it in two different ways to come up with some strategies. So first, we have to look at the roots of the racial part of the teacher shortage. And so there were thousands upon thousands of Black educators who were segregated in Black-only schools. And then when we had desegregation, school districts didn't believe they were worthy or capable of teaching white children and other children. So they simply didn't hire all of these Black teachers. And so it really started with there. But then most recently, people have so many opportunities. So there's staffing challenges in several sectors. I think it is being exacerbated by the retirements of the baby boomers, and there's so many choices. And so the talented people that we want in our classrooms are sitting in our high schools right now. We actually have a signing day for our seniors who are going into education. And if they stay in the program, we are providing tuition assistance. And once they get there, they finish their undergraduate degree and they get their license, they get first shot at interviews for positions in our district. The other approach, we do have employees who may not have that undergraduate degree, or they may have it in something other than teaching, who have expressed an interest. And so once again, the state has allocated money, and Minnesota Department of Education has given us money to help them with the barriers to them receiving their teaching degree. And so we actually have had our first adult pathway finish, and we've hired her as an elementary teacher.
That's awesome. I love that, like, that we're trying to kind of, I don't want to say promote from within, because it's not, they're kids working on their degree, but to be able to come back to your community and be a part of where it all kind of started for you, that's awesome. Because I know, like, Chris Belmont, I know Jared, like, these are all administrators and part of your leadership team, and these people were also born and raised in the Burnsville schools.
And we have some graduates who are now employees. They work in Project Kids, they're working in community theater. So we're really trying to tap into the talent that's right here.
Community engagement and transparency are two things that I think are kind of pivotal in your leadership style. I think that you're very good at those two things. How do you ensure that voices are heard within your district and from employees and from the community, and how do we make sure that all the diverse people within this community are able to be heard?
So I think it's part of me and my leadership team being out in the community. I try to go to schools at least twice a week. I try to attend community events in Burnsville-Eagan-Savage. And I think also having an open door, it's surprising people when they contact me, they always preface it by saying, I know how busy you are and I apologize. And I have to tell them, you are the work. I'm here to serve you. And I think my team members take that same approach to be open. This morning before the interview, I had one more stop on my spring walking tour. I was at William Byrne Elementary, and that's just a time for principals and staff as I'm walking through the building to tell me what's on their mind, engage with some students, watching them go through the breakfast line, so excited, getting their breakfast and morning meeting. So I think people need to see me and then to be authentic. We're not perfect, but we will name when we make mistakes and then work collaboratively to problem solve. And so I think that's really helpful, not to dehumanize ourselves. We're human too, and sometimes we make mistakes. I think people appreciate that. Just really making sure that we're focused on our children and staying true to our values.
Throughout your career, obviously, I know that you have mentored many people, but you probably have been mentored. Can you tell me about some of the inspirational people kind of that have mentored you and helped you determine the type of leader you wanted to be?
I think what set me up to know what good mentoring is and support and nurturing came from my parents and my grandparents, great-grandmother, and extended aunts and uncles. In my career, I think first Principal Nadia Parker at St. Paul Central, who tapped me on the shoulder to take on more responsibility, to become student council advisor. I think my principal advisor, Neil Nickerson from the University of Minnesota, Dr. Nickerson was a great mentor. Really talked about that it's about relationships, and your job as a principal is to hire the right people. That's 90% of your job. Then I think of my colleagues too, my teacher colleagues. So at St. Paul Central, Renee Willard was the coordinator of Gifted and Talented, and we formed a strong bond, and to this day, and I was her assistant director of curriculum when she was director of curriculum. And then I think of my mentor, Superintendent Bernadette Johnson, the former superintendent of Minneapolis Public Schools, who's now a professor at Minnesota State Mankato. So those mentors that just support you in your role, they're thought partners. I think that's really important. They don't tell you what to do, but kind of bring out the questions so you can illuminate your own thinking, and then to give you resources. So those are the ones that come to mind. So family, professional mentors, and then I would say my teachers were always great role models. It was interesting when I moved to Minnesota to hear that there were children who looked like me, Black and brown children who had never had a teacher in their entire educational career who looked like them. So my kindergarten teacher was Black. My 8th grade teacher was Black. I had Black teachers in high school. And so I had to really step back to understand children's experience. So I always had role models who looked like me.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you've had? I think that one of the weird spots of like I have a leadership team, I have people that work with us that help kind of shape where we're headed and the things that we're doing within our company. But ultimately it does rest on my head for a lot of the actual final decisions. Being a superintendent, I'm sure it's kind of similar. You clearly have like a cabinet and you have people that help you, but what are some of the biggest challenges, I guess, that you've had as the superintendent? What are kind of some of the biggest challenges you've had, and how have you addressed them?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the challenges is that everyone doesn't see how brilliant our children are. They add biases and assumptions about our children. So I think it's understanding that all children can learn. They can grow academically, socially, and emotionally with the right support and given the right amount of time. So I think that's the first challenge, that people don't always see children as beautiful as they are. The second challenge, I think, will be financial challenges. We've been really fortunate that in addition to the state funding, even though it's not meeting all of our needs, that we do have a community, taxpayers have voted to give us additional money through an operating levy as well as a tech levy. So I think that's a challenge. I think also the challenge of staffing, most recently, really letting people know how great it is, not only as a teacher, but finance, food and nutrition, all the operational sides. Please consider us. It's a great place to work. You have great colleagues, so it's really about finding the right people to help with that, to share the messages of our families and students, sharing the great experiences they have. And that when they don't have a great experience, being able to tell them, oh, they named it, they took ownership, and then they helped us to problem solve. So I think we started talking to middle schoolers. They don't even see a teacher as a possible career. So you have to start early, I think. So those are the three challenges.
So reflecting kind of on your journey, what advice would you have to young educators, maybe educators that are people of color? They were considering getting into leadership within education. If they're considering education as a career, what advice would you give to those people that might be reflecting on some of this?
So first, I would say you really have to have your work aligned to your purpose. So for me, it's always been to help children and teenagers thrive. To look at their hopes and dreams, what their passions are, and to support them. So I think that's first for anybody. Your work has to be aligned to your purpose. And then what are you passionate about? So when I was a high school teacher, I would give advice to students. Think about what you would do without being paid for. So I will always read to children. I will always support children. I don't think I need to be paid. I was doing that as a high school student. I worked in after school programs. I did summer camp. I worked at the YMCA. I would say to teachers, it is such a blessing. Anything hard is worth working at. So when it's a very challenging, because you're dealing with humans and they all come with their unique needs, just keeping those high expectations. No, literacy is the foundation, whether it's science, math, or physical education. That literacy, that comprehension, making sense of the world. Kids ask the darndest questions. So when I was student council advisor at St. Paul Central and I had a retreat with the student council members, they asked me 20 questions. And this was 1990s. They wanted to know what I was. It was what race, ethnicity.
Oh.
So people say, what's on people's mind? And it was very curious why they need to know. They couldn't understand whether I was white, biracial, Black, or Indian, or Hispanic. That's why I said, why are you asking me that? So for some reason, they had to have that frame. Mm-hmm. It was very interesting. And then they just asked a lot of other questions. What was I interested in? But I found that very interesting. That was one of their first questions. Yeah. What are you? And I share that because my advice to teachers, you have to go where the children lead you. So you have to honestly answer their questions. You never know what's on their mind. Mm-hmm. So I visited William Byrne this morning, and Dr. Belmont was with me, my assistant superintendent, and they wanted to know, and the principal, how old we were. And so we posed the question, how old do you think I am? You're 115 years. And then another person wanted to know how Dr. Belmont got so tall. Oh. So I share that. You allow the space for kids to share what they're wondering about.
Yeah. No, it's powerful. So as your career goes on at Burnsville-Eagan-Savage, what do you hope your legacy is? And what kind of steps are you taking to make sure that that legacy is left, and that you've kind of, what are your key performance indicators for you personally? What do you think is going to be what we hang our hat on for your career?
So that the children are better off than before I came. So that I've some way had a positive impact, and that all the people that I've interacted with, that they are enriched by our interaction. So you want to have that positive outcome. So I think that's my legacy. It's that people felt that they were seen and they were valued by me, that they were respected for who they were, that children know I had their best interests, even though I may make mistakes. And so really that the children and teenagers are better off now.
Well, one last game we like to play on Chalk Talk. We got our little Kemmetmueller. Go ahead and pull any card, read the question, and that is your final question of the day.
Okay. Who has been the most influential person in your professional life and why? So I really have to go with my mother and father. That faith, education, and family were really key. So I consider as a professional, these people, colleagues, are my families, the families I serve. So I would have to say my parents have been the most influential. They were part of the greatest generation. So they were born in the 1920s. Just their approach to life, I think we all can learn from that. Perseverance. Went through the Depression. I remember my mother had 2 pairs of shoes, one for school and one for just being at home. So when she had a middle-class lifestyle, she had so many shoes, she would just buy shoes. So taught me, sometimes you have to indulge in life too. So you sacrifice when you have to, growing up in the Great Depression. But then when you have an opportunity to enjoy life, splurge. Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Chalk Talk. I want to thank Theresa again for taking time out of her very busy schedule to sit down and meet with us. Your commitment to the community, to transparency, to equity, to education is inspiring. I learned a lot having this conversation with you, and I really am glad. Go ahead, talk to this camera, whoever you want to. If there's anything you want to share, go ahead. The floor is yours. Otherwise, we are good to go.
Tomorrow's another day, and the sun will shine. That's what I would say. So some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue, but you got to keep on going, folks.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Okay.